So we have created our first application which renders data, but rendering data alone is not very interesting. What we really want to be able to do is interact with the data. You can see the way we're building our component is using an object with a number of options, the template option and the data option, for example. This is what is known as the options API. And this is one way, the most classic way to build a Vue component. There is another way to do this, which is called the composition API, which is something we're going to be looking at later on. For now, let's continue learning about the options API. And we're going to see another one of those options, and that one is called methods. And this is where all of our methods are going to live, and methods are how we interact with our data. We're going to create a new method called increment, and this is going to increment a count, which we're going to create now. I'm going to delete all those variables and create a new count of 0, and we're just going to render that count up here. If we head back to our browser and refresh it, you can see count is now 0. And we need some way to increment this count. Anything inside of data is made available inside of the methods by using this. So I can say this.count to get access to that count variable, and we're going to increase it by 1 every time this method is called. We haven't got a way of calling this method yet, so we're going to see the most simple way is just by attaching the app to the window and calling the method manually. So let's try that out. I'm going to head over to my console and refresh the page to make sure everything's up to date. And if I do a window.app, I have an access to the Vue application here. And I'm able to access both data and methods by just saying the variable here. For example, count is 0 and increment is going to be a function. If we go ahead and call increment, we can see the DOM is actually updating 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And what's happening here is an example of Vue's reactivity system. We don't have to update the DOM manually ourselves. All we need to do is update the data, and because anything inside of data is reactive, as soon as this value changes, Vue is going to know to update the DOM for us automatically. And this is an example of data-driven UIs. The idea is instead of updating the DOM manually, which is very error-prone and can lead to bugs, all we need to do is update our data and let the framework take care of the rest. So this is all good and well, everything is working, but really what we want to do is have a button where the user can click on the button and increment the number by themselves. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to create a new button here, and this is just going to be an increment button, and we need some way to call this method. What you would traditionally do in JavaScript is say onClick, and then call the name of the method. And this is very close to how you do it in Vue as well. All we need to do is replace the on with v-on, and we pass in the name of the event here. And this can be any regular JavaScript event. And we're just going to call the increment method. You can put the syntax, the brackets on if you want, but you can omit them if you don't want those as well. Let's try this out. I'm going to head back to my browser and refresh the page. And if we click on this button, you can see everything is working. It is incrementing correctly. And we're able to use any JavaScript event here we like. For example, I could use the mouse over event. And what's going to happen now is if I mouse over the button, it's going to increment. This is not very practical, but you can see the example here is any JavaScript event is valid here. So this is nothing special. It's just Vue wrapping these events for you and making everything reactive. You see we have the brackets here, and you are able to pass some arguments as well. So I might pass in a value of 5 here, and we're going to be able to then use that value to increment the value by 5. So let's just try that out and see if it's all working. And this should be incrementing by 5, and so it is. Everything is working correctly. And this is a really nice way of organizing your components. It's very clear what's going on. We have template, which is where our template lives. Data is everything that's going to be reactive, and methods generally are going to be how the user integrates or interacts with the data rather. So most Vue components are going to be organized very similar to this. And by following this kind of standard, you're going to make your applications much easier to understand and read.